Welcome everyone to this tutorial video on DataFrames. So DataFrames are going to be our main utility when working with Pandas, and it is just a bunch of series that share the same index values. So let me start off by importing NumPy as NP and Pandas as PD, and let me also import randan from the numpy.random library. So import randan, and let me also put a random generator seed. So I'm keeping this just so that the values that I generate from my random generator is actually same to yours if you run this exact code in your Jupyter notebook. So let me run that. Now let's start off by creating our data frame. So data frame can be created by calling the data frame function off of Pandas, and it takes in parameters as data, index, and unlike series we have columns also. So for the data, I'm going to be supplying a random matrix of 5 rows and 4 columns, and then for the index, let me supply my own index values A, B, C, D, and E, which are 5 indexes for 5 rows. And then let me provide in 4 column names. So equals to W, X, Y, and Z. So let me call DF. So that gives us our data frame. So it looks kind of like the Excel spreadsheet if you are working in Jupyter Notebook, but if you are using other IDEs, it may look quite different. So basically data frames look like this, so do not worry too much about how yours look. Now let's start off by selecting a column from the data frame. So for that, I'm gonna be supplying the column name over here, which is W, to grab the first column. So if I run that, you can see that it actually gives me a series where A, B, C, D, E are the indexes and the values are over there. So you can say that, like I told earlier at the start of the video, data frames are series which have the same index number. So index values over here are A, B, C, D, E, and the columns W, X, Y, and G all have the same index values. So now if I want to, let me also point out another thing. You can also select columns like this if you are familiar with SQL statements, so just by keeping a dot, but I wouldn't recommend this as in most cases Pandas may get confused with this as a method. If I press shift tab over here, oh my bad, tab over here, it's not working, man. So let me try that again. df dot, so tab over there, and you can see that there are a list of methods that Panda has. So if you have some column names that are similar to this methods, then Panda may get confused and it may output an error. So just stick with the general convention of using square brackets and supplementing the column name. So then for selecting multiple columns, you can send in a list too. So W, Z, that gives me the W and G columns. So for creating new columns, what you can do is actually call the new column name. So if I call this, it will output an error saying key error, that's new, because the data frame doesn't have the new column over here now. But I can actually use two other data frame columns, for example df w plus df y, to generate another column called new. And if I run this without the new column actually being in the data frame, it doesn't output an error. So if I check df, then it shows that new is over here. So that's how you add a column in a data frame. Now if you want to drop the column new, what you have to do is call df.drop, and then drop basically means removing the column. So then I'll pass in the new as the column name, and if I run that, what you can see is that labels new is not contained in axis. So what axis means in a pandas data frame is that you can see axis equals to 0 as a default, and this means that the df.drop function is actually looking at the rows of the panda data frame. So if you want to select the columns, to drop the column name new and the entire column as well, so you have to put in axis as 1. So that's how you drop the new column from the by selecting the axis as 1. Now another thing I want you to notice is that if I call df again, you can see that the new column is actually there. That means this df.drop function hasn't actually replaced the data frame, but it's just showing us the results after dropping the new column. So if I want to replace the data frame by dropping the column, I'll have to call in supply the in place parameter and put it as true. So if I run this and then I call the data frame again, you can see that the new column has been dropped. So if you want to understand more about why x-axis are called as have axis number as 0 and y-axis have axis number as 1, this is because data frames are actually built on top of numpy. So for example, if I show you the shape of the data frame, it actually is a tuple of 5 rows and 5 columns, for 5 rows and 4 columns. So 5 here is the index position 0 and 4 here is the index position 1, which symbolizes 5 as the rows and the 4 as the columns. So rows has an index number 0 and columns has an index number 1. So now let's go to selecting rows. We had been selecting columns by just supplying the column name. Now for selecting rows, we're actually going to be calling the LOC function, which takes in the rows. For example, if I pass in the row name A, then that gives me a series. So you can see that not only columns are series, but also rows are series as well, with the indexes as the column names. Now if I want to call the rows by the index position, so for example, if I want to call C, I can run the iloc function and supply in the index 2. So that's the C. If I show you here over here, so the data frame C over here looks like this when you call it using the iloc function. So now let's select subsets of rows and columns. So if I want to select the value 0.84 over here, then I'm going to be calling the df.log function again, and then I'll be supplying the row name, which is B, and then the column name, which is Y. So if I run this, it will give me the value 0.84. So this is similar to list. And then if you want to select subsets, what you can do is call the df.log function again. And for example, if you want to have the A rows and the B rows and the W column and the Y column, so for that I'll provide in a list of the rows that I want to have in my data frame, and then the column names, so also as a list. So for that, W and then Y. Now if I call this, it gives me a data frame of only the A and B rows with the W and Y columns. So I'll have to stop about data frames for now, but I'll be continuing over this. So if you guys want to follow along, just subscribe And if you have any problem or any questions related to data frames or pandas as a whole, just leave them out in the comment sections and I'll get to it. So yeah, that's it for now. Ta-da.